As we head into spring, it is really hard to believe that we are looking at some of the biggest snows of the season for some areas this weekend and into early next week. Not just for the Northeast, but we're talking about the Northern Plains states too. Multiple rounds of heavy snow on the way, wild weather ahead. Stick around, we're going to talk all about it. All right, let's go. And you may say, let's not. Let's talk about spring. Well, I mean, it is going to be warm in some areas, but not in the Northeast. We've got snow moving this way. We've also got snow here in the forecast across the Northern Plains. We're going to break all that down today, and we're going to start with our system in the east. First, this is going to be a decent wind maker for some areas, and it's going to bring a lot of rain. Some of it much needed here in the mid-Atlantic, too. A couple of inches possible, and some of that rain could be heavy, too, along the coast from the Jersey Shore south toward the Delmarva Peninsula from, I would say, Baltimore, D.C., down to Richmond. Here comes the wintry precipitation into the Northeast, and that snow could be on the heavy side in a few spots. One thing that I think to really keep an eye on will be the icing potential here, right on the boundary of where we see that rain snow. Some of that warm air here aloft going to be overriding some of that colder air at the surface that is being held in place by high pressure to the north. Cold enough for all snow, though, once you get north of Albany, up into places like Burlington, Vermont, the mountains of New Hampshire and Vermont, and then into Maine, where we could see, I was saying this yesterday, I think there are areas that overperform that could see well over 16 up to 20 inches of snow. Now, I don't think that's going to be the norm, but I think we're looking at a solid 6 to 12 here. And let's just zoom in a little closer here and talk about some of these areas. So on Saturday, we'll likely be waking up to snow going here from Buffalo over to Syracuse, where we could see a bit of a mix. And then areas further east of that toward Albany, kind of a mix here too. We could see some decent snow amounts. In fact, take a look at this. First, we've got a slew of winter storm warnings. This actually back here is with our second system that we're going to talk about in just a second. But across the Northeast, a lot of winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories. Up and down the coast, we've got flood watches in effect. Also, some heavy rain across South Florida, too, with flood watches here, and some pretty windy conditions, too, with that storm kicking out into the Rockies. So we're going to get breezy from Texas up into Kansas and Oklahoma. But let's zoom in on the Northeast. We've got winter storm warnings all the way down to the coast, from Portland to Augusta, all the way up into northern Maine. Heavy snow expected toward Bangor. Winter storm watches a little further toward the coast here in eastern Maine. Some of that warm air may mix in, and we may see kind of a rain-snow mix. And then back towards Vermont, again, Burlington, back towards Rutland. We'll see the heavy snow going here for sure. And then once you drop back west toward Glens Falls, I think we're snow here, but head south and you start to kind of mix things in. And that's going to be the key, right? So if you start to mix with sleet or freezing rain, that's going to eat into your snow totals. And I think that is a potential bust here for the forecast for places like Syracuse, over to Albany, over toward Pittsfield. Hartford, same thing here. We do have winter weather advisories in effect. But again, I think that's going to be the problem, is the mixing here with the ice, the freezing rain, the sleet, and the snow, which really, honestly, isn't any better. So again, by morning, we've got the rain and snow going here from New York City. The rain changes to snow as you head north towards Albany. And then again, a mix here. That mix continues over into parts of Massachusetts, southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire too. And then look, back toward New York. I think a place to watch would be right here just north of Syracuse, and then once you get north into parts of Glens Falls, up towards Burlington, these areas could see a heavy dump of snow, I believe, and that continues over into New Hampshire. Watch this area, though, right? The southern part of New Hampshire, the southern part of Maine, we could see some icing here. That includes places like Portland, up to Bangor, and then once you get north, I think, of Bangor, you see all snow here, and that could be really heavy. I mean, look at these numbers. Yesterday, I showed you some of these numbers. They were peaking out around 15 to 16 inches. Today, these numbers are peaking out. I mean, I don't have to show you 22 peaking out here. I don't know that I believe we see that. I said that yesterday with 15, but look, the warnings have been upgraded to, 8 to 16 inches or something like that in these areas. So I got to look at this and go, it may actually end up snowing that much. 1 to 2 feet, I think, in the higher elevations here in the parts of Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Now, I think an average would probably be close to what the Weather Service is going with, that 8 to 16 with locally higher amounts. And then once you get back into New York, those numbers start to taper off. So once you get, say, back towards Buffalo, not nearly as much. But look, Watertown, I think we could see a good, 6 to 8 to 10 inches. And then do we see a band of snow set up here? Again, that's the question. And where does that rain snow line set up? Big bust forecast potential here on the south side of things. And that would just be because of the icing. Either way, northern New England, I think this is our big heavy snow as we head into Saturday, and then Saturday night into early Sunday, things start to wrap up. Now let's talk about the next system because it's going to impact a lot of you as well. We do start to dry out some from the mid-Atlantic into the southeast. Temperatures across the south, by the way, decently mild, I guess, for this time of year. Most of the cold weather to the north. In fact, out ahead of our next system, we're going to develop a southerly flow, so we'll start to warm up in these areas ahead of this system. However, on the north side of things, it's going to be cold enough for some snow, and it could be really heavy. So say from basically Lake Michigan west, and I would say north of Nebraska and Iowa. This is going to be your best chance for snow. And the problem with places like Minneapolis and St. Paul, I think we end up seeing a bit of a mix of snow over to sleet, freezing rain, and then eventually to rain, and then maybe back to snow on the backside of it. Most of the snow will be on the northwest side of this low. Again, the track will be the key. However, it still looks like it could be a huge storm. And I think the problem here is we could see blizzard conditions. I talked about this yesterday. I still feel that way. These winds could gust 50 to 60 miles per hour. I mean, let's start here in Nebraska. I mean, it looks like it's mostly here from North Platte north up to Valentine. We could see more than 6 inches. Some of these areas, I mean, look at the models putting out 16 inches here close to Valentine. I don't know that we see that, but you get the idea. And not only is it going to be snowing, even if you just get a couple of inches, the wind is going to be ferocious. So we could see, again, blizzard conditions. Now, really, I think most of the snow north of Scotts Bluff. So once you head north, say what, toward Rapid City, then north into Aberdeen, into South Dakota, Pierre, I think we're in the solid 6 to 12, and that heavy snow extends up toward Bismarck. Maybe not as heavy here, and then it really starts to cut off across northern North Dakota just because of the moisture and how far north and west it's going to move. But look how heavy the snow is trying to fall here just to the east here. Right? Really strong here in that northwest corner of Iowa and the southwest corner here of Minnesota. So Sioux Falls, do we see a foot of snow? Maybe so out of this up towards Brookings, Watertown, north of that up toward Fargo. I think a solid foot plus, okay? That feels pretty good. And then as you get into Minnesota, this is going to be really tricky right here once you get toward Minneapolis and St. Paul. Now back towards St. Cloud, I think we stay all snow here, or at least majority snow. You may go to rain for a bit and then back to snow. And the further north and west you go, the better chances you have of staying all snow. So back towards, again, Fargo, Grand Forks, we're good. Bismarck, I think it's all snow for you. Now over toward Rochester, Minnesota, even Minneapolis and St. Paul with that southerly flow, we could start as snow and then flip over to rain. So a lot of the snow may end up melting here. But once you get north of, say, Eau Claire, once you get up towards Duluth, I think you're looking solid for a good foot plus of snow at this point. And again, this is crazy, right? We're talking about more snow as we head into the end of March than we've seen pretty much all year. And then up into the Arrowhead of Minnesota, a good 6 to 12 plus here too. And these numbers, these are modeled numbers. They don't sometimes account for compaction as well. So maybe just knock a little bit off this, but you get the idea. Heavy snow in the forecast for these areas. And across the west too, we're talking about the Sierra Nevada, going to pick up several feet of snow, the Colorado Rockies, the Wasatch, down into the mountains of Arizona. Yes, even into the mountains of New Mexico, we're going to see snow. And then let's not forget Montana, back into Idaho. These areas are going to see 6 to 12 inches. Some of the valleys, of course, less, and the mountains more. So an active weather forecast. And as this storm moves off to the east, heading into Sunday afternoon into Monday morning, there could be some strong to severe thunderstorms in this area. We're talking about strong damaging winds and maybe even a few tornadoes. We've still got a few days to iron this out, so you'll want to stay tuned. And hey, if you like this content, I hope you'll subscribe. Honestly, it really helps the channel a whole lot. Many of you have done that. Thank you so much for doing it and supporting what I'm doing here on YouTube. You don't have to leave me anything, but if you just subscribe, if you want to give it a like, that's more than enough. If you're getting anything out of it, I do appreciate it. Now, let's talk a little bit about what happens after this, because I think across the deep south, as our storm moves to the north and east, we'll have to watch places like Arkansas, Mississippi, East Texas, Louisiana. Really, honestly, I would say we need to kind of watch this whole area for severe weather from Sunday to Monday and Tuesday. And then what happens after that, I think there's just a little bit of uncertainty, but still, severe weather, it's on the table with this storm too. All right, that's all I got for now. I'll catch you next time.